In the meantime, when our moderator is setting up her system, I think I'll request Mr. Parul Soni to come and share your initial thoughts. Over to you. You can speak from there. Oh.
Yeah, you started? Yeah. No, thank you. I think good afternoon. I think we're a bit late to start the session and really apologize for it. But the thinking is very excited to meet you after this COVID, this pandemic. After 2 years, I am now visiting Mumbai after March 2020. So one is that we should all be very, very thankful to God that we are all alive and kicking. Do you agree with me or not? I can't hear. I think lunch time हो गया ना, तो थोड़ा सा मुश्किल है. ये पैनल होगा बहुत बढ़िया. I think हमारे जो moderator हैं वो US से आई हैं. Especially she was very excited to have this panel and also to ask good questions. It's want to involve you and collaborate. Participation would be there. So I think bear with us, and I have only this to say. I think it will be great because ESG as such is a topic which we have been practicing from very long. It is not new topic per se, because we are very now conscious about the whole environment perspective. Earlier we used to feel that climate change is not real, but now you see that the climate change is not only real, but it's also started hitting you. The second is your entire social perspective, looking at the social perspective and social thinking about how to involve people, stakeholders, the entire thinking about bringing that value of social change. That is also real, and we trying to. And the third is basically the discussions which are happening at the board level. I think that is important, that people should discuss these hard-hitting issues, and that is really important. So it is not new, but we are combining the effort to say that we are reaching at the top, and we will be talking about this in the panel. I think Angela, as soon as she's ready, we will, happy to start. So, if you want to say something, please. I think we can share. We can. The time is of essence.
I think till Ma'am Angela works out her modalities. May I please request Ma'am Deepika Mogli Shetty, Chief of Policy and Partnerships with XTEP Foundation, to share her thoughts on ESG and diversity, equity and inclusion, India as a strategic partner. Over to you.
Good afternoon. I'm very apologizing for being between you and lunch. Unfortunately, this is, you usually hear people saying at the end of their session, I don't want to come between you and lunch, and let me end this quickly. Yeah, no, that's not us. We are between you and lunch today. So my apologies for that. But having said that, my name is Deepika. I work with a non-profit called XTEP Foundation. My role there is looking at policy and partnerships. But much of our work is in the space of technology and education. But the reason we're having this conversation is looking at, and I'm on this panel, is to look at the idea of what policy means and how policy connects to culture, and culture in terms of culture within organizations and change. Because ultimately, while policy gives you a framework, almost like a goal to achieve, I know particularly the people in this room have the unenvious task of actually operationalizing it into basic activities, which then result in cultural change, to look at that kind of connect between the two in the context of equity and diversion, and that's the conversation I'm looking forward to.
Hi, I'm Gayatri. I lead CSR and Sustainability at Godrej Group. Honestly, ESG is something that's been very new in my career, and if I look at my career as a very long span of time, yes, new. I started off my work in the social sector, and I think that has shaped what I do today. One of the amazing things about the pandemic was really seeing the amount of worldwide interest that had seemingly out of nowhere, suddenly focused on everything that had to do with social parameters and ESG. Now there's been a very long time that we've been talking about environment and leaving the planet in a better condition than that in which we find it, not taking away from resources, but really doing our bit with judicious use and so on. And corporations have, both largely faced the blame of what's not going well, and also largely picked up, a lot of the solutions and the thinking around, how does that need to change. And so, when I saw this happen 2 years ago with, questions related to social parameters, things like, suddenly things like worker welfare, social safety nets, social security, that's, we started hearing these words, spoken a lot more than we ever had before. At least in the span of, the past 15 years of my career, if I look back to when I started working in the social sector, just, saying social security or entitlements or, access to a safety net was, people wondered why. So it's good to see that, there's this renewed focus on social, which includes things like equity, inclusion and diversity, in the hope that, in focusing on these areas, we can build back stronger than before COVID. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation.
What is happening is a social consciousness has come. When everybody before 2020 used to feel that this will be our way of life and we will run on a treadmill. A time came in April 2020 when everybody started shutting down. I think I have, for a lot of people in this generation and people who have born, in this generation have seen for the first time countries being shut or cities being shut. So what is important here? There is a lot of learning here. The learning was the human capital, the human resource became very important. And that's the whole topic, that's our entire thinking about that, if people don't survive, companies will not survive, okay? If they don't have the whole thinking about, if we will not save them, there will be no company which will survive, or there will be no government or any civil society organization survive. I have been talking about this from very long with my colleagues and friends and my network, talking about the 3 Ps. The people, people and people. We are talking about the ESG. Here we are talking about the 3 Ps, which is people, people and people. Means that the people are the investors, people are the buyers, and people are the people in terms of the employees who run companies. So for us, if we talk about ESG, nothing will be complete, because if you look at all the 3 parameters of ESG, I think we are very, very heavily dependent on the people, and that quadrant is basically working on this entire perspective. I think, Angela, are you ready now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
sorry
over to you. I don't want to take the...
Okay, no, I appreciate it. Thank you. So they're just putting up the presentation, but I'll just, I'll start. I'll go ahead and start. So thank you very much. And I'm so sorry we're keeping you from your lunch, but we will try to be as efficient as possible. So thank you. So welcome to the ESG Summit, India. I'm Angela Chitkara, founder and CEO of US-India Corridor and the World in 2020 Plus Project, a strategic communications firm focusing on DEI and ESG. How better, thank you. Sorry, do I just click this? Okay, how better public-private partnerships can create a better world. So joining us today is an illustrious panel made up of senior-level executives from industry and nonprofits. And so they went ahead and introduced themselves, and I appreciate it. Thank you. The topic for this afternoon session is strengthening stakeholder engagement through diversity, equity, and inclusion. According to the World in 2020 report published in January of 2020, I had the opportunity to interview 45 senior-level executives across industries and sectors. The main finding, the lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion poses social risks within an ESG framework. As 2020 unfolded, it became clear that DEI is foundational to the work we do today as problem solvers in society. It is beyond a communications exercise, and it ties to an organizational value and purpose, transparency and accountability by its stakeholders in the communities it serves and operates in with a license to operate. Solving problems such as health inequity and access to resources through strengthening stakeholder engagement. We cannot solve societal problems alone. Over the past 20 years, we have seen multinationals go from being risk-averse to being fully vested in the India market with high exposure to risk. Some companies have as much as 40% of its workforce residing outside of its home market in markets like India. Today, stakeholders of organizations are expecting more detail from companies about the markets where they serve and operate in. The newly formed International Sustainability Standards Board, ISSB, is expected to release a comprehensive global baseline of sustainability disclosure standards next month in June. As the ESG community looks forward to the release, we recognize that there is no one-size-fits-all, especially for a market like India. In today's session, we will explore the following: defining diversity, equity, and inclusion in the India market. What's global sustainability disclosure standards mean in the India market? Problem solving through better public-private partnerships. Today's session now will be interactive, so we want to hear from you. Hopefully there's a microphone that will be passed around if you're interested in speaking. We want you to answer these questions that we're going to pose. It's going to be a collaborative process, and the panelists here will engage. So we will pose the questions, and we want to hear from you what your thoughts are. And there's no right or wrong answer, and the panelists again will contribute. So let's go ahead and start. So we've already went ahead and introduced the panelists. So here's the first question. How do we define diversity, equity, and inclusion in the India market? Anyone want to take this? Does anyone want to raise their hand and contribute and share? What do you think diversity, equity, and inclusion means in the India market? Okay, so maybe we can start with the panelists then. Parul, I know you have strong views on this. So how do we define diversity, equity, and inclusion?
I think, Angela, what is happening is this is all coming from a perspective which is the Western thinking of D&I, D, E, and I. Reason being that if you look at India today, I will not change my stand. The thinking is that we have been trying to solve a lot of issues, but the complexity is very, very investor driven.
Right.
Okay, so the thing is that when it comes to investment, when foreign investors or investors are talking about the issues or the, you can say, the formats and thinking about bringing this value to the Indian market, people will follow. But when if you really look at the Indian market taking its own shape and size, to see and following this will take time. You know, and it has to be more self-regulated, individual-driven, then driven by outside. Because till if we can tie this up with the whole investor perspective, definitely it will be faster. But the thinking is that people will do more tick box, checks, and people will not understand why they are trying to do it. Because the perspective is that if you look at from the labor force multiplier, we have a lot of people who have been working in companies and also in the government. Only 27% of women are in the labor force. And the other thing is, we're not only talking about women inclusion, we're talking about disability, we're talking about LGBTQ, we're talking about the whole perspective of bringing that value of bringing more diversity in the thinking and the equity of our thinking and responsibility from the governance perspective. I will give to whoever you
Thank you. Thank you. Deepika.
Before I make my comment, I have a question, which is, does this audience think Indian society is diverse? Just put your hands up. Yeah? It's an obvious answer, right? It's one of those, it is diverse. But are our organizations reflective of that diversity? Yeah? No, there are no hands that have gone up. Are we an equitable society? We try to be, but yeah. So I think if we were to look at our organizations, whether for-profit, non-profit, or any, or even government for that matter, if we were to try to think of them as a microcosm of society, whether it reflects the diversity of the world outside, the short answer to that is not really, or not entirely, right? So if I just want to connect a few dots in terms of why, in the context of India, diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that we either, every one of us are in spaces at various points in time where you feel like you are not like anyone else who's around you, or that you are in a space where a lot of people are like you. Both of those are true for us. Constitutionally, I just want to kind of look at the ethos of why we've constructed a certain type of society. The idea of equity, diversity is in the DNA of the Constitution of India. Right, from access to education, access to healthcare, access to all kinds of things. Often enough, we've seen this as something that government has to deliver to society, and not necessarily thinking of how can I incorporate these principles in the functioning of organizations, in the society that is my company. So to that extent, I think there is an interesting narrative to be created in terms of what diversity means, what equity would mean, and what inclusion means in the context of companies, organizations in India, partly because we recognize the diversity around us, and you see that it's not reflected internally. We recognize the inequity around us every day. It's also sort of reflected internally. What does it mean to make the journey to shift from that to a new equilibrium? That we have enough around us in terms of policies, principles, and ethos to help make that journey. But the difficulty, I think, really is to think of how to implement it practically with specific ideas and how to, what kind of recruitment policies will enable diversity to happen. What does it mean to be truly inclusive outside of the basic infrastructural stuff to enable inclusion? Those are the kinds of things.
May I come in? Paolo made a very interesting point. Unfortunately, in the corporates, especially the HR understands diversity as gender diversity only. They'll advertise for vacancies, diversity candidates preferred. If you call up, you tell them, oh, but you are a man, how can you apply for it? So, man cannot be diverse. So, they are limiting the definition of diversity to only female candidates. It will come to a stage when poor men will be considered under diversity, when there will be all women around. Okay, so Paul made a nice point that diversity has to include regional diversity, racial diversity, geographical diversity, physical ability, LGBT, the whole lot of other things. We have to be accepting all others. Okay, and that is what corporates have to encourage, but I haven't come across any corporate HR person who believes diversity goes beyond gender diversity. Very unfortunate. So I hope we are making some progress on that.
Also, that was an excellent point, but there's also where diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have to consider where it is within the organization. You know, is it in a C-suite? Is it housed in the HR department? And what sort of communication is happening and implementation, as Deepika had mentioned. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just try to build on what Arun said. I think it's also important to look at a diversity
Sorry, I can't.
from a diversity from a lens of India's situation right now, because we are a very diverse country from that perspective. We have diversity by way of religion, by way of social strata, by way of geography, everything that you can think of globally, that's there in India. So how do you ensure that that's inclusive in whatever we are talking about? It should not be one specific. I recall when I was working on affirmative action, we were not having, forget about HR, the consultants who can really work on the inclusion part of affirmative action growth. So that's the situation we are into. So we have to look at a perspective which is very holistic, one. Two, from a specific India lens.
Thank you.
Sorry if you're taking your time.
No, thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so,
Geiger.
yeah, thanks. Thanks for those comments. That was nice. It was nice to hear, to engage this way instead of just sort of talking from a stage. So I think, diversity, equity and inclusion are about a lot of things in India, right? At the heart of it is people, and at the heart of it is all types of people thriving. People within companies, people in ecosystems that companies operate in, value chains that companies build, and in the communities in which we're present, right? And to me, it's all of the social parameters under ESG and more, right? So when I say social parameters under ESG, it's easy to say diversity and to stop at diversity, and like you rightly mentioned, that's what's happening, right? In a very sort of narrow way, companies are only focusing on gender diversity as meaning women's representation in the workforce, but it can be a whole lot more than that, right? Even gender diversity. But then there's an equity and an inclusion element as well. So gender, sexuality, human rights, we don't talk about these things, right? No, hardly any company wants to talk about human rights or disclose what's going wrong internally or in the supply chain, right? Things like worker welfare, living wages, right? There is there have been a number of, the World Benchmarking Alliance just recently did a study on what do companies worldwide actually put out in terms of their social performance indicators and inequity in their supply chains and their operations. And they found that nobody utters a word about living wages, right? But the fact of the matter is, people need to be paid so that they can afford basics, which is healthcare, education, etc., for their families, right? That's equity. Not having to sacrifice those things is equity. So, so it's all of these things and more, because we all as corporations also have a voice, right? And a voice that we need to use judiciously. We advertise, we shape perceptions, we shape thoughts, we lobby, right? So how are we applying a diversity, equity and inclusion lens to all of these things as well beyond what we report and disclose on? I think is super important. And then my last point on that, which is not measurable at all, is how are we promoting cultures of diversity in thinking within, right? That is the bedrock of innovation and growth for any company. And so are we allowing for diverse perspectives and so on to exist in our companies? So that's what it is to me.
Excellent. Thank you. So the next question is, what does a culture of inclusion look like inside of our organizations and in the communities where our organizations serve and operate? So we had addressed this already, more or less. But let's continue.
This brings up a question, particularly in my mind, and I'm wondering whether you think of it the same way. When you hear the word policy, what is the thought that comes? It's something that you have to comply with, right? It's a set of things that need to get done. So the question is, does policy define culture or does culture define policy? And here's a framing that I might want to engage with, and please comment as we go, is if you think of policy as a construct which includes a set of principles, the principles of equity, of the principles of diversity or whatever it is. And we are always crafting policies, right? Governments do it, organizations do it. We are constantly creating policies. But if you break up policies into 4 components, the end result of it is a set of actions which result in becoming actually the culture of an organization. Policy is a set of principles which you can agree with. Very often you can't disagree with unless it's really something that's it's against interests, yours or others. It then breaks into specific objectives that you go after. Then you will take a set of measures, which are actions you may take or create ways to measure whether you're meeting the objectives. All of this, in the end, has to result in practical actions. If we think of it that way, practical actions you take repeatedly, connected to principles, becomes culture. Right? So, what does a culture of inclusion look like within our organizations? I don't know whether it's too early to ask this question, but we thought we'll ask anyway. What does it look like and what would you want it to look like?
And what informs, right? What informs culture within the organization?
So I think Angela and my thinking is from both of you. I'm an entrepreneur. I started companies not only in India but in other countries also. The thinking is, if you look at the mindset of a founder or a person who's starting a business, the thing is that the culture of inclusion does not arise. I'm telling you, I'm being very, very frank. The reason is that, if I can, there are some colleagues who have worked with me earlier, if you look at their boardrooms, they will include those people in the boardroom where they can depend on them, or they feel that they will not oppose and all those kind of things. So the thinking is the culture is not changing. The culture is, as soon as a new person comes in, you try to first see that this person should not be opposing me or all those kinds of things. So that's the mindset. So culture of inclusion will come when we will start trusting each other. So there is no, I can say, in a kind of a market situation, when there is a market-like situation, the trust is very limited, and because of that, the culture of inclusion is not happening to that level, which should happen as such. So my thinking is, if you look at from a larger, bigger perspective, compare India with maybe the Nordics or the US and others. In the US boards also, if you look at the board, they are all friends of the board.
Right.
There are, if X starts, Elon Musk starts, he'll get his friends on the board. Inclusion, because the culture starts from the board and then goes down.
That's right.
So that's what the culture has to change from the governance, from the board level. Then you say, okay, a HR manager will come and HR manager will change the culture. Now nothing will change, because the HR manager is a man of the board.
Right, so representation matters, right? And fitting, and
You look at the representation, we are more men. I'm a minority here, but you are more men here. So the thing is that, this is the state of our country.
right, and fitting in, right? The fitting in culture. So inclusion requires a constant recalibration, right, of who should be included.
Individual responsibility to take that, to say the culture has to change. We have to bring more people to see that we should not be afraid of getting new people in. Somebody had, came to me and saying that we want to collaborate with your company. I said, yes, please. He starts speaking about the credential he has. I said, I don't want your credentials. As an individual, I want to see you to be working with me, not your credentials. You have built those credentials when you were alive. So the thing is, give more मौका दो लोगों को, और लोगों को समझो कि individually, then to say that what ecosystem they are bringing in.
Individual accountability.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So what should we consider material and disclosure specific to diversity, equity, and inclusion? So we talked about the culture of inclusion within organizations, but how do we make that material? Should we consider it, what should be considered to be material?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think sure, from a company's perspective, but also from the perspective of somebody who cares about these things, right? I think what is so I think we have a great framework in India for listed companies, to be honest. SEBI has started a BRSR, a business responsibility and sustainability report, which was previously the BRR. It's extremely detailed. There's a lot of stuff in there. Out of some 144, 45 mandatory indicators, is around 40 that focus pretty much solely on social aspects, right? What kind of trainings are we giving our people? What is our gender diversity at a board level, senior management level, mid-management level, worker, temporary and casual worker level? So it's detailed, right? I think what to me is missing in all of this, right? And when I look at ESG disclosures that cover DEI and across the world, what's missing is really how is it that companies are implementing these things? So diversity, equity, inclusion, these are not areas that one can make change in immediately, right? It's not like making a soap or a manufacturing line. It takes time. There's all sorts of things that are beyond a company's control, right? That also need to shift. A whole nation, society, etc. needs to shift at the same time. So we're one part of all of that greater whole. So I think what is missing is how are companies working towards these things? What sort of initiatives do they have? Some of the more qualitative stuff that gives it color and life, right? Because ultimately DI is about people, it's not about numbers, right? So what is giving our initiatives color, flavor? Why do we think they will succeed or not? That's one bit. The second bit is the risks, right?
Yeah.
Nobody reports on DEI risks.
Yeah.
What is the risk of not looking at these things? I don't think any single company at all in this country could have foreseen what happened during the pandemic. Nobody thought that they would be sitting in empty factories with workers walking back to their homes across the country in the blazing heat, and really, I don't think there's a single HR head who thought this will happen. How do we get workers back, or how do we prepare for this? Right? Exactly. And we don't consider people in that, right? We consider earthquake, natural disaster, etc. We don't consider people, our own people, and we don't consider communities, right? What is going to happen when we draw out all the water from the ground in a particular area, even if we as a company are not drawing it out, right? And we're using our water that we rainwater harvest. Communities will not like that. Obviously not. Why would they? We wouldn't if we were living there. Right?
It's an interesting point. The thing is, you're seeing the missing link is the understanding of why ESG. I'm telling you that. It's all consultant led. If I tell you to fly, they will fly. If they say no, don't fly, you will catch COVID. People will not fly. The thing is that they don't use their brains. The understanding of the whole word terminology of ESG or any framework, people in terms of in the company at the board level, they don't know. The thing is that this is all, the CFO goes and says this is a mandatory requirement we have to do. They say, okay, if we will not get money, loans will be expensive, I think we should do ESG. If ask them that why ESG? So what you are talking about, Angela, is the material, is the whole issue of profitability. That's a bigger issue than talking about all these things. And the BCP, from your perspective, the business continuity planning, to say that nobody had a plan in terms of the country will be shut down, what will be the plan A, what will be the plan B, and what will be plan C of saving people's lives. It's not hit and trial.
We have that now, but it took a pandemic for corporates to realize that, right? And similarly.
No, good to continue.
Similarly, right? How do we actually how do we put a financial value to this risk that helps people other businesses, whether it's, our investors, etc., understand it, that helps boards also get it, that there is a huge financial risk to it, right? Today, if you're a company that does not have even a gender, something as basic in diversity, I say basic because we've been talking about women in the workforce for a very long time as compared to other communities. Even when you're looking at women's inclusion, nobody wants to join a company no woman wants to join a company where she's going to potentially be the only woman on the shop floor, right? That's not aspirational at all. That's not a safe environment either. So the risks are everywhere. It's just that we need to think through and disclose. Now we do this, right? We do an exercise every year to think through what do each of these ESG risks mean specifically for each one of our businesses. Our risk as far as vulnerability with people, people's vulnerability is concerned, is not the same at Godrej Properties and at Godrej Agrovet. Godrej Properties is a real estate firm. It requires construction workers to work on our sites. That is not the same group of people that's working in our factories for Godrej Agrovet, right? What are the vulnerabilities of farmers who are our customers for Godrej Agrovet? Absolutely not the same for Godrej Consumer Products. So it requires really specifically thinking through how does each of these things, how does it pose a risk to my business? How does it matter to my business? And how could I potentially have a competitive edge for my business by focusing on these things?
And thank you. And it also, we have to work toward embedding it into, and aligning it into the organization, embedding it into aligning it with the mission and values. It ties to corporate reputation, talent, recruitment, and retention, the brand within the organization. So when you talk about business imperative, that's meeting business objectives. There's mentorship and sponsorship that it ties to within the organization. When companies report, in my research I learned that it's important that companies report on a regular basis, because when companies report inclusion on a regular basis, whether it's their race or ethnicity data, those disclosures are happening regularly. When that doesn't happen, it signals a lack of inclusion. And it also signals, it does the exact opposite of building trust. It questions credibility.
I have 3 points to make on the idea of disclosure. One is that if you see disclosure as a starting point rather than an end point, right? And in some ways, what is it a starting point for? Starting point for enabling you to see. If you have, for example, what are report cards in a school? At a school level, ultimately is enabling you to see where you are or where the child is. And then you basically have to take the actions necessary to take the child on a learning journey. And perhaps we made to see this disclosure idea not necessarily as a stick from the top, but we're actually as an opportunity to generate data to make a learning journey of change as a starting point to decisions of change. Yeah, that's sort of the point I wanted to make, to not see disclosures only as just reporting for the sake of reporting, but enabling the ability to see data so that you can make a journey of change, whether it's to get to a better place or to change standards and even practices within the organization.
Okay, thank you, Deepika. So here's a question that may seem quite controversial, but it's worth asking. Should caste be considered material?
And that will be viral by next maybe 5 minutes. We'll go viral with this question. Because then, people will be chasing you. Do you want to go to US again?
I'm going to hide behind this podium.
So you want to ask the audience first? And then
I'm asking. Nobody, everybody's shy or they're hungry. Anyone have Roma?
It's a very, very touchy subject. I don't think we can go
Right.
So,
But you know what's interesting is now, if you take a global lens, and the global standards are being established right now, caste was actually a question that was raised. So that tells you that India is a unique market, and global standards cannot be imposed on what the India market should look like. And so that's why it should come from all of you as leaders on whether or not this should be included. Because this is actually being considered right now.
There is a solution.
Yes.
There is a very good solution I think we should work on by dropping our family names. Like for example, John is John, not John Bendick. You know, Parul is only Parul, not Suni. You know, or Mahesh is not Ramaswamy, only Mahesh. The thinking is that as soon as we bring the families, what is God today? You know, the thinking is when you are born, you don't know what is God. Your mom and dad, your parents tell you that this is the belief you have to believe in. Caste is that. You believe that you are what? You are not born with that caste or maybe that creed, or you know, you can say from that perspective or thinking about where you're being born. Because there is no choice. I have a question for you. How do you determine a child born in Eritrea, Ethiopia, or Barmer, or Jaisalmer? What is the choice of that child to be born in that parent's life? The thinking is same as the caste. Nobody can do much on that, but only thing which we can all work is dropping our surnames and the family names to say that we should be thinking about equality from that perspective, then to do much, because this will be a very large change to bring in from the global perspective. That's the solution I'm thinking of.
Right. Anyone else have anything to say? No? Okay.
It's a very idealistic scenario that you created, but it's not real. Not possible. It's not possible because people are very deeply attached to their identity. And because of that, they don't want to give up their caste. Recently, there was a post on Twitter where a Muslim guy converted to Hinduism, right? And he converted to a Rajput caste, a Thakur caste. And you could see the thread there where all the Thakurs opposed it. But why did you become a Thakur? Why can't you become a Jat or a Brahmin or somebody else? We don't want you, right? So in corporate India, if you want to talk about diversity, you have to include caste in the material, because otherwise, it's very subtle, but it happens all the time.
Couple of observations. Parul, to your suggestion, I read something very interesting a couple of days ago, wherein there was this board meeting of Muthoot Group, where there were 7 directors. All the names of all the 7 directors, first name was George. If you remove the second name, just imagine what will happen there. Okay, so that was one. Second is, coming to the caste factor, unfortunately, it starts from the top in India. The seats are allocated to political parties based on the caste. Even the ministerial allocation is done based on the caste to arrive at a balance. Very unfortunate, but we need to change that.
I think we should move on.
Okay. Thank you. Based on the lessons over the past 2 years, how can multinationals and Indian companies strengthen stakeholder engagement and prepare for the next pandemic or global crisis?
Very scary. I think it's very scary that we have to, now prepare for the next pandemic. I think the lessons which we have all, I was talking before the panel, is basically today if we are live in Peking, that's the biggest lesson, that how we have survived. And lessons individually, there are lessons. So there are lessons at the village level, there is lessons at the, at the panchayat level, block level, district level, state level, and country level. And all these levels of lessons are different. in the villages, how they survived, how self-reliant was it, and thinking out, they survived much better than us. And really, that's what the thinking is. In the villages, in the panchayats, at the block level, district, yes, it was difficult because we started bringing more regulations. The district magistrate used to bring circulars every day. And I can tell you that the reason is that and all the circulars were so confusing. And what he was passing the last day and the next day was basically some confusion used to happen, and people used to feel that, this is right or that is right? So less regulation and less working and believing in God is much better in a kind of a pandemic situation tend to be very, very regulated from a perspective which we need a local district body to really govern us. So the lesson is less of regulation. The preparedness has to be there. Look at examples of West, in terms of examples of China. China basically, or if you look at the DRR, the disaster risk reduction, if the population is 100, 33% of material is there in their grounds to basically help save lives. What we do is, we have a problem, then we start thinking of procurement. And when we start doing procurement, the procurement takes time because people have to supply, and we don't have. What has happened with PPE? The entire personal protection equipment, these doctors used to wear. And we in the government bought PPEs for 1,850 rupees. Today PPE is available for 50 rupees, less than 50 rupees. So the thing is that we have not seen this. The learning has to be steep, and learning should not be that learning in the books as such. It is practical learning. So governments and the stakeholders together, we have to bring that kind of thinking that we learn together. We create a tripartite kind of an arrangement where government, private sector and civil society work together and bring this kind of a change. So I think what is a lesson is cohesive and a collaborative thinking than individualistic thinking in this space. So my trigger will be loud, कुछ चिल्लाना पड़ रहा.
If I had to say this, I'd say a little bit more openness and listening on the ground. And how do you enable that to happen is distributing the ability to see, therefore distributing the ability to solve. Ultimately what happened was local solutions. Right? This is a big wicked problem. Is to say it's only Sarkar is going to be able to solve it, is situations like this bring to the fold. And also collaboration is great, coordination, all of that is great. It never works to the effective at scale way that you really want you to do. But if we all are able to see open data, helping you to make the types of decisions that you needed to make and to solve locally and collaborate locally, whether it's for ensuring children had access to learning or food or all of the other things that happened, that would help. The second thing which I think has been an interesting practice is also the idea of openness going into putting things out there that people can use and reuse, where in the context of technology, for example, open source technology components enabled solutions to be built, which could be scaled up very quickly. So, very simply put, create policies and frameworks that enable cooperation and the ability to see in an open way much more organically, rather than formal structures of collaboration. Thank you.
I think from my perspective, the biggest lesson has really been around listening and understanding, and I'm going to answer this from the lens of DE and I, right? Is listening and understanding to what do people need. People who are connected to a company in any way, whether they're living around their factory, whether they're workers, in the supply chain, what do people need? For us, it extended at GCPL to our consumers as well, right? Because we make sanitizer and soaps and so on. So, what do people need, and how can we have a continuous understanding of where people are, what are they thinking, what are their needs, and then based on that, understand, okay, what do we do as a company to address these needs? So it's really continuous listening.
And the role of the entrepreneurs, Harlow, entrepreneurs have filled the gaps as well, right?
Yeah. I think entrepreneurs have a very funny way to react. The thing is, they look at opportunity. You know, in this, I will tell you, there are a lot of new entrepreneurs who have thrived in this opportunity, and you will see that we have got more unicorns in last 1 year or maybe 1.5 years, 18 months than what we were seeing earlier. So the thinking is, you get opportunity. What is happening on the digital money perspective? Digital money, as soon as we had Notebandi, Paytm sold. So my thinking is, from this entire perspective of bringing this value to, say, entrepreneurs as such, I think entrepreneurs look at opportunity and they want to also bring new variety of innovation into this entire perspective. I think it's a good way to look at. But from this entire thinking, you ought to learn from the entrepreneurship thing that we should be more entrepreneurial than seeking jobs. So these are things which I feel is learning.
Okay, so we're just going to wrap up. So just if we can just take one last minute each, maybe incorporate this last question into your answer. Anyone have any input or questions from the audience? So as we wrap up, I'd like for you to maybe think about this question. As a leader in ESG, you have a seat at the management table. What do you need to be an effective leader and advance DEI and ESG within your organizations?
So that's a question more for the people who are sitting as the CSR lead and sustainability leader, saying that, do you have seat on the table? My thinking is, I don't see that. Because the promoters are still asking questions to say that they are using you as more as professional expertise than telling you that be on the board and give us direction so that we can take it forward from that perspective. So my feelings are very different from, I've been dealing with it. So I feel that if we incorporate or co-opt a CSR /ESG /sustainability leader in the board position, I think that would be much better, because that person can advise the board to take good real-time situation and steer the ship in a way which will be useful for our global journey as such, as India.
Well, Parul has made sort of the big point. I want to add, maybe sometimes it's about the small things, and they matter too, and they matter more maybe, yeah. And perhaps again, I would say, allow for more space and actions and body of knowledge to build within organizations on different things that different people can do. Whether it's about banning single-use plastic, or you want to say, okay, I want to bring in a colleague who is differently abled. You don't make things difficult by asking more questions and putting more barriers. Enable it. So what if you loosen up a couple of things? There's no danger that you will, if not everything needs to happen top down, so maybe the small things can be bottom up too. In some ways, that way culture can define policy. So thank you.
Yeah. For the seat at the table, really, I mean, the question was, is there a seat at the management table? I'd say absolutely yes. Completely agree with Parul that, that seat at the board level is obviously not there. But is there and I can only speak from my perspective and my own reality over here, is there the ability to influence the board? Absolutely. We have sustainable, and obviously we have to have CSR committees by law, so we have those for each of our group companies. But we also have sustainability companies that look into sustainability issues and ESG. So the ability to influence them is yes. Is there actual interest that's genuine? Absolutely. Are they able to add value as board members back to what we do as a company on ESG? 100%. So my experience is probably very different from others. I can't speak for other companies, just for where I work. In terms of what would I think help, in making my job more effective or making me more effective at what I do, I think the biggest thing is really having the ability to work and the mind space and bandwidth of different teams within our companies. My view is that there is no way that a sustainability team or an ESG team in isolation can solve the really tough challenges when it comes to ESG that a company needs to. It cannot be done without procurement, without manufacturing, without R&D, without HR. And so I think for what would, and that's changing too, right? Everybody's taking on a slice of ESG goals. But I think having more bandwidth, and that was my one wish I would wish for that. More bandwidth and ability of different teams to look at where does sustainability intersect with their work.
And it's not solved overnight, right? So it's long term. It's long term. It's part of your long term sustainability plan. So we thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For a copy of the report, the World in 2020 report, you can go to worldin2020.com. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. May I please request Mr. Kumar, CEO, CIMP BIF Foundation, to come and felicitate the guests. We'll start with the ladies first. May I request Kumodi to felicitate Madam Angela Chitkara, founder and CEO, US India Corridor. May I have a big round of applause from the audience, please? Thank you. Please felicitate Madam Gayatri Divecha, Head CSR and Sustainability, Godrej Industries Limited. May I please request to felicitate Madam Deepika Voglishetty, Chief of Policy and Partnerships, XTEP Foundation. Big round of applause, please. And last but not the least, may I request to felicitate Mr. Parul Soni, Founder and Global Managing Partner, Think Through Consulting. And a big round of applause from the audience. Yes, thank you so much. It was indeed a very vivid and elaborate session. Thank you, Madam Angela, for such elaborate discussions. And with this, we mark the end of session number 3. We'll soon start session number 4, that is on enabling ESG at grassroots, with a mission to fight against climate change and to secure net zero by 2070. We need to enable an environment that makes ESG a people's movement. This panel will share their plans, experiences, case studies, and key learnings on how to meet India's COP26 goals. So may I request the moderator, Mr. Arun Aroraji, Director of Chetak Foundation, to come on the dais. May I please request Mukundan Iyer, CEO, Ultragas and Energy Limited. Madam Kiran Sarkar, Head Sustainability, Mahindra & Mahindra, Automotive and Farm Business. Mr. Rishi Patania, Corporate Head, CSR, UPL Limited. And Nawed Ahmed, Co-Founder, Carbon Negative Company. Please take your seats on the dais, please. Over to you.
So are we not offering lunch to audience? Okay, great. Great. I'm Arun Arora. I am Director with Chetak Foundation. I have an experience of about 3 decades working in various organizations, including Escorts, Maruti Suzuki, Jindal Steel and Power, GMR Delhi Airport, GVK, Kane Oil and Gas, and Vedanta. And thereafter I joined Chetak Group. I'm heading their foundation and also, can you hear me? And also supporting their strategic and communication requirement. I'm really thankful to Mr. Rusen Kumar and India CSR for choosing me as a moderator. I'm sure Rusen Kumar is not very fond of Arnab Goswami, because he wants me to moderate and he wants panelists to speak, unlike in Arnab Goswami's show where no one gets to speak. There was one. Second is I also thought many people have not had their lunch, so maybe I'll start with some humor. But then I was really scared after the Will Smith Chris rock and roll episode. So I thought I'd come to the point. Now we have just this set of panelists that are there with us. So the sequence that we're going to follow is we will introduce each one of them and thereafter we will raise certain points relating to ESG. And I'll just request many of the people who are here, they are into CSR, ESG, and they also handle communication. I see there's a lot of lawyers' language in the language of ESG, CSR. Again, there are a lot of jargon are being used, so I'll request in case we can simplify this. Going back to basics, we have earth, all giving earth, all forgiving earth, gives us everything. Can we simply give it back to earth? Can we look at inclusive growth wherein we see that when we grow, our colleagues also grow? Basic, simple sustainability is when you grow together, when you accept, when you are accepting of others, when you are appreciating others, and when you're giving back to earth. So that will take care of a lot of problems. So we request our panelists to be very, very simple in their approach and language. That was one. And then one more point I wanted to make is when we speak, can we also look at first person as to what is that we can do instead of what is that others can do, what is that government can do, what is that system can do, what is that we can do to improve scenario at ESG. So first of all, we have Mr. Mukundan, who's CEO of Ultra Gas and Energy Limited. He has more than 3 decades of experience across industries and geographies. And prior to Ultra Gas, he was heading the on-site and merchant business for Linde Middle East and played a pioneering role in development of green hydrogen, ammonia and hydrogen refueling station across various government and private enterprises in the Middle East. Being an avid advocate for clean energy, smart city development and technology to uplift the quality of people's life, Mr. Mukundan has been passionate about deployment of cryogenic application technology across various industries towards energy saving and pollution reduction. He has served on the board of various companies and has worked with various investment projects with steel majors supporting building of air separation plants and hydrogen units across India and Middle East. He has worked in downstream carbon capture and utilization projects, enhancing recovery and fracking CO2 in the upstream petrochemical projects. In fact, that is something we have common. I work with Jain Oil and Gas and we worked on fracking and we worked on enhanced oil recovery. Now I would like to introduce Mr. Naved Ahmed. Mr. Mukundan, can you raise hand? So we have Mr. Naved Ahmed, who's co-founder of Carbon Negative company, very interesting name. I'm sure he'll elaborate more on that. He's had a career in marketing, advertising, publishing, public relations, corporate social responsibility, social enterprise. You should leave something for us also. He's worked everywhere. Currently, he's focusing on bringing together businesses with development organization on CSR programs that create value for both. He's been an amazing copywriter with the advertising industry, and he set up his PR agency and he's doing extremely well in that as well. Naved, can you please raise your hand? So we have Kiran, who's head sustainability for Mahindra & Mahindra's automotive and farm business division. Kiran is an environment graduate, and in fact, special request to you because you are not only environment graduate, you are also environment law graduate. So you will be most acquainted with the kind of language we all use, so in case we can simplify in some fashion for us lesser mortal and common folks. And she's been working with Mahindra for almost 15 years now. It's a long career there. And she currently leads sustainability work at Mahindra & Mahindra. During her tenure with Mahindra, she's worked in various domains of sustainability across value chains. Kiran specializes in diverse portfolio of renewable energy, water and energy resource efficiency, watershed recharge management, waste minimization, recycling, enterprise risk and mitigation, carbon positive efforts, employees health and safety, road safety, environment assurance. She has expertise in ESG disclosures, reporting and rating. Have you left anything from that domain? Very interesting. She's a member of audit practitioners team of CII, so you know who to approach in case you're going for CII audit, who can help you there, and a member of working group of Filthy Water Mission, Western Region. She's been recognized as an emerging sustainability leader of the year by Sustainability Outlook magazine. And now we also have Rishi Patania. He is corporate head CSR UPL Group. Rishi is working as head of CSR for UPL Group. He has spent 25 years. You can see all of them are veterans in the development space, largely around CSR and sustainability. Rishi is dividing the always human philosophy of UPL. Well, that is very interesting. UPL's work for economic and social growth of the community started 50 years back. The company believes that humankind is one community where each member is responsible for the well-being of another. Very interesting, Rishi, very well thought of. So now, basically, our theme for the conference is enabling ESG at grassroots. So in fact, we've had a discussion prior to our meeting along with Rishi and Navid and Kiran and Mr. Mukundan, and we considered certain areas that we can touch upon. We are going to ask specific questions to people, and first of all, I'll request Mr. Mukundan to share a very interesting presentation that he's brought along. The broad area I just mentioned before I call you. One is, for instance, what is the objective? Objective basically is we have terms like COP26, wherein we have this community of partners of almost 196 countries who agreed on certain guidelines to be followed. And then we had to become carbon neutral by, some people say 2050, India says 2070. So there are various things that we're going to discuss, but let me invite Mr. Mukundan. He can share a presentation and then we can take it forward from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Arun, and yes, working. For your preamble, to keep the language simple to a technologist can be very challenging. So, coming from a graduate background, so I'll try and see how much I can do justice to that in terms of keeping the language. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. And to give you a perspective, I think ESG, no doubt, is the future, and we have to do everything necessary now to make sure that our future is clean and we have for generations to come, we lead a high quality of life. So I think there is no denying this fact. Having spent a lot of time engaging with governments outside of India, I can quite easily see that the amount of intensity at which the rest of the world is progressing on that, and the way technology is galloping, the day regulation is galloping ahead, I think the forum addresses a very critical point, which is how do we get this ESG at the grassroots level? Before I get there, I think just a small introduction about ultra gas, so that I'll lay the context as where we're going to head in the few slides ahead. Ultra gas is basically a clean tech company. We are in the business of providing clean energy to industries and commercial establishments. And that's really the goal, clean tech, which means providing clean energy. And our go-to product in this journey to start with is going to be liquefied natural gas. So when I say liquefied, that's where I'm going to get a little complicated with technology and so on and so forth. Starting with liquefied natural gas, I'll explain why it is liquefied natural gas later. Our vision is to start enabling customers to access green fuels such as hydrogen, such as green ammonia, so on and so forth. And ultimately, we would like to build our expertise in ensuring there is pollution control, flow stack reduction in terms of reducing the carbon footprint of many of our industrial customers. So that's really the context, right? And therefore, E for us is the most critical part of our vision, which is environment, and we are there to make sure that we can facilitate the decarbonization of the Indian economy. So that's really where we are. Can I move the slides? Is the one? Yeah, let me see. All right, so before I get to, we need to really understand what we mean by grassroots. Okay, so this is really the crux of the problem, right? So in the previous discussion, I think people talked about large industries having a very good ecosystem that sort of supports majority of the initiatives such as governance, etc. I think the MSMEs really represent a big chunk of our industrial footprint. And this MSME segment is huge. And that to me really is grassroots from an industrial point of view. So when I say, why is it huge? It represents 34 to 40% of the economy, which is significant. But in terms of numbers, you can imagine for every one large industrial outlet, you can think about 100 to 200 MSMEs in terms of footprint. And these are not situated in just one cluster or in just one location. They are situated in literally, they're spread all over the country, and some of them are inaccessible, they're not easy to access, and they come with their own characteristics. And being MSMEs, and most of you, some of you who are from MSMEs, who interacted with MSMEs, are very typical characteristics. So they have challenges with respect to multiple issues. And I think in the previous discussion, people talked about profitability, people talked about economic cycles. This is the segment which is the most prone to economic cycles. There's still the ecosystem hasn't reached them when it comes to financing. The system has not geared for governance, so on and so forth. This typically the system, I would say, this segment, I would say it might be a very crude thing to say, but they are not well cared for from a majority of angles we see, and that's why it's important that we address this segment. And most of them use fuels for the industrial heating purposes, which are not clean. Now, this is a huge segment, and that affects the quality of our lives wherever we go. If I look at large industries, they have a beautiful system. They are willing to take those challenges. They have the agenda to change fuels, industrial heating requirements. They have all these things possible. You have somebody talked about, SEBI having a BRSR, reporting. They have beautiful sustainability programs. But this segment is very hard to get, a very consistent program going. So they all use fuels which literally pollute the atmosphere. And knowingly or unknowingly, they do that because they have no choice. Most important reasons for that is cost and access to those cleaner fuels. Now, in all my discussions with majority of these MSMEs, only the constant refrain is, look, we don't have access, it's either very expensive, it's not available. So it sort of bottlenecks them from going to the next step. And they are not happy about it. That's the point I'm saying. So, like I said, they triangulate their requirement. I think the most important thing for them is cost, consistency, because they are not CapEx easy. So most of these MSMEs have a problem with CapEx. They don't have that much financial wherewithal to invest in infrastructure to ensure there is uninterrupted supply of fuel. And there is also a flexibility issue. So they struggle with having a flexible supply of fuel. Now, the objective of ultra gas is to basically make sure, and I'll say I won't use ultra gas as a point here. I think the most important point to address to the MSMEs is to make sure that the accessibility of clean energy is first of all available. I think fundamentally when we talk of going to the grassroots, I think we need to make sure that we make available clean energy to them available. When I say available, I could make a clean fuel available for a price which is very, very expensive, which is not going to solve the problem, right? So when you say access, we're going to make it available to them at a price and at a point which is easy for them to address and digest. I think if you look at the Indian context, the green fuel market is still not mature. Not only here, I think it's a problem rest of the globe, and there are people working on it. But generally speaking, green fuel market is yet to really take off, and it's going to be a while. It will happen because there is a lot of initiatives going on. But let's just face it, it's still expensive. When I talk about industrial heating, I'm not talking about solar, I'm not talking about electricity generation. I'm talking about environment which is getting polluted by carbon emitting fuels, right? Which is a significant part of the overall pollution component. And green fuels are, while there is a lot of technology going on among us, among the industries, it is still not available for consumption. When I go to Europe, it's still expensive. It's expensive in Europe. It's still expensive in the US. Green hydrogen, there's a lot of talk about it, and I understand it's great. But ask me today, it's still not there, right? It's going to be at least 10, 15 years before we get there, right? But so what do we need? We need something which is sort of a transition before we get to green fuel, because we don't have that much time. So we need to start acting today so that by in 10, 15 years time, we have a situation well under control. So the point here is accessibility will start with a fuel which is going to be better than what you're using today and available at their doorstep at a price point which is easy for them to digest. I think that's the main point that I'm driving home here. So I talked about liquefied natural gas. So we all know about natural gas. Natural gas is nothing but methane, which is available, which is drilled out of the ground. It's Qatar and all of these countries have plenty of natural gas. And as per data, the availability of natural gas in the world is going to be tripling in the next 5 to 10 years. That's a clean fuel, and the technology that is now changing the world's landscape is cryogenic technology. Today, natural gas is actually liquefied natural gas in terms of cryogenics is nothing but a gas compressed at minus 192 to 162 degrees at 600 times its original volume, which means that you can literally carry 600 cylinders of gas in one cylinder, if I were to use a simple analogy. All the air in this room can be compressed into a small cylinder in the form of a liquid fuel, in the form of a liquid air. That's the cryogenic technology that's available today. And it makes a huge difference in the supply chain of fuels. Because if I were to transport so much air or so much gas, it's going to be really, really expensive. And that's why cryogenics technology, which is probably the most fastest growing technology in the fuel industry, is going to make a big difference to the industry as we see, because it's easier to store, we can transport this to longer distances, and make sure that industries get the benefit of this technology in order for them to reduce their carbon footprint. So just to give you a perspective in terms of what we are talking about here. If you look at natural gas, which is here, which is a green bar, it emits 21 kgs of CO2 per kilocalories per lakh kilocalories of fuel, right? And all the way up to wood, which is 46. So if you look at all the other fuel which is stacked next to each other, we are talking about natural gas being currently the most cleanest fuel, and every other fuel, starting from LPG, which is 16% more CO2 emitting, kerosene, which is more CO2 emitting, all the way up to wood, which is 54%. If you triangulate this whole MSME industry, you'll be surprised to know majority of them are actually in the diesel, furnace oil, coal section. And that is about, I'd say, 40% of the Indian economy. And the regulator, in terms of ecosystem that's available for them to shift, is either expensive or not even available. Because we are talking about somebody who's 500 kilometers from a small town in Chennai, from a town away from Chennai, and pipelines are not going to reach there. And there is an industry there which is fully utilizing the coal available next door and polluting it. And if you ask me frankly, they do need clean fuel, but that's not accessible there. Now we talked about the pollution component of the CO2 emission component of various fuels. Here's the interesting part. If you look at the natural gas, which is LNG, if you look at the energy density point of view, you will see the highest energy density, which is 13,000 kilocalories per gram, right? Which is huge. And if you look at all the fuels, they all stack lower than natural gas. So there was a statement made by a minister the other day that Indian economy currently is at about 6% penetration of natural gas. The government wants it to become 15%, which means that's the kind of incentive, that's the kind of focus the government is having. And rightfully, LNG stacks right there because that's the kind of fuel which is highly efficient and least polluting from a comparison to all other fuels you have. Now, this is the important part of why we think LNG as a technology is going to transform the profile of the Indian MSME market. If you look at this, this is the way LNG will be delivered to every customer across the country. It is agnostic to size and location. So anyone in the country can have access to LNG simply because LNG is transported in the liquid form from the terminal to all the way to the customer. If you look at this way, the LNG is transported through road tankers. There is a terminal in India. There are 4 terminals in India already. And if I remember correctly, there are 4 more being under considerations in several forms. And if you look at China, they have 22. India is right now at 4, and therefore Indian government is focusing on building this infrastructure. And from there, putting road tankers which are fitted with cryogenic storage tanks, you can deliver LNG all the way to the customer so that he uses the same natural gas in the most effective way, and put on top the digital solutions of tracking and reordering, etc., etc. And India, is extremely competent when it comes to digital technology. It's really this is really having double whammy with the customer. Now, this little slide talks about why LNG is going to be so crucial and why is it so different from the rest of the fuels. I think this is the technological aspect of this paradigm which is yet not understood, I'll say, and probably this is something that we have to open up for a discussion. The pipe distribution of natural gas can only get to some place. It can't penetrate all of India. It's going to be very expensive. It's time consuming. It took about 10 years for the country to have about 10,000 kilometers of pipeline, which is only 6% of the penetration of industries. 6%. 10,000 kilometers of pipeline laid by different CGD networks, different government entities. Whereas we can be very sharp with LNG because LNG can go any part of the country with just a truck distance, right? And with a storage tank there, it can meet any requirement. So it's very sharp, and it's faster and deeper and cheaper, simply because it avoids compression, decompression, several other costs associated with it. On a total cost ownership basis, you'll see that LNG is far cheaper compared to pressurized gas. So the other thing is, we got to look at how do we facilitate these MSMEs in adopting this. So I think someone needs to step forward and say that we will take the capex, because I think MSMEs have this innate problem with capex. And I think from our side, I think our objective and vision is to absorb that capex. And I'm sure once this business becomes bigger, it'll probably be the norm, and we'll be very happy to lead that, pioneer that, and there'll be more and more companies coming forward. But I think the most important aspect here is, as a vision, we want to provide capex to MSMEs so that they don't have that problem of having to fund for an infrastructure to get clean fuel. So I'm just going back to this basic statement that we've seen someone talk about UPIs before, right? It transformed the country. People thought, digital finance will never be the day, will never be possible. And when I came back from the US, when I came back from Middle East, I was shocked to see the level of penetration in India. It's just astounding, right? I didn't even think that this is possible. And but that's possible. We've seen the success. And I think with a lot of vision, with a lot of commitment, delivering clean fuels to the grassroots is eminently possible. I think I will end with that. And when they embrace the principle and be there as facilitators to that, I think ESG will be a reality with the grassroots. Thank you so much.
Very well articulated, Mr. Mukundan. And I really like your example of Paytm. If you time it well with demonetization, you can succeed anyway. You time it very well. Thanks, but amazing. Mr. Mukundan, we'll come back to you with some questions. Let me also induct a couple of other colleagues here. So let me start with Kiran, who's been heading this function for a long time. So I'll ask you a very simple question, Kiran. How important are the roles of innovation and scale of impact to drive the sustainability projects? So let's begin with that. But I have some provoking questions for you, Mr. Mukundan, after you go with this.
Yeah, thank you. So since morning we are hearing about ESG, the role of ESG, and I think let's be optimistic also from the perspective of, how the India has developed in this field of, and I'm talking about the E part. So we had decided that target of 20% renewable, and we have already crossed that target. We are planning to 50% renewable country by 2030, which is kind of a great target for a country like India with such a population. So I want to take this view and, let's see that, there are problems. There are this 1.5 degree, 2 degree. These are hovering issues, and it's a sword that is on our head. But yes, everybody is working towards it in their own capacity. So I think let's give the credit the way government is also working, and from corporate perspective, I want to talk about is, just don't think that it is something which is not possible, and it is something which is it's kind of a ball that we just know when it will burst or something like that. But What I think is a small solution. I want to give a very simple example of, say, LED lighting, which is a very, very simple example. And when I'm talking about scale of impact, when we started doing the LED lighting as a program, and at that time Ujala program with the government with energy, this Ministry of Power, it was a very simple but efficient lighting karna, nothing else. It's a very simple program. But how we have derived it, all our location across India have shifted at the same time to the LED lighting. We took this program to our, all the MSMEs and supplier partners, and my 131 supplier, more than 131 suppliers have already shifted to the LED lighting. Same program we have taken to the dealership and distributor network where they are selling cars. So there the entire thing is shifted to LED. Then we took it to the employees and their families and communities. So see, the one simple idea that is LED lighting, and it has covered the entire stakeholders beyond my boundary and the community as well. So I'm saying that there are simple solutions available. We have to take that perspective, take simple ideas, small ideas, and take a step ahead. And we are talking about net zero, but you know, so there are a lot of companies have also committed net zero. But I want to say today is we are not equipped with the technology of that kind to become a net zero business, at least at this point of time, because Mukundan spoke about green hydrogen, right? And wherever I go, I get the question of electrical vehicle, right? So just to give a perspective on the EV is going to pollute more if the grid does not change into renewable, because ultimately you are shifting IC engine to EV, and it's just you're shifting from one fuel to another. So EV is not going to help if the grid is not renewable. So you know, EV is not the solution. EV is not the only solution, but the infrastructure around it is solution. So net zero is a bigger game, and it is not going to, we will not achieve it from the simple and whatever we are doing right now, but there will be innovative solutions which will come in the picture. But I think collaboration is the key word for net zero, because see, like companies like Mukundan's company, and then there are some other players are working in this direction. So we have to collaborate for each and everything, for different innovation, technologies, everything, so that we can achieve the net zero target. So I think basic funda is innovation, collaboration, and the scale of impact. We can go ahead with.
Okay, very interesting, Kiran, thanks. That brings me to a question which is common to both Mukundan and you. You mentioned about EVs and how you're going to shift the pollution from the roads to maybe wherever the electricity is being produced, supposing they are using coal. Now, that is what I was referring to the question that I wanted to ask you also. I'm not sure how much is the gas reserve that India has, but as regards coal is concerned, we have huge reserves of coal. Okay, and internationally, all the countries have gone through their industrial cycle, and maybe we are at a stage where we can either let go of whatever coal is lying underneath and stick to the curse of natural resources theory, like for instance, African countries or some of the states that we have here, Jharkhand, Bihar, Odisha, which has huge reserves of coal. Should we use coal, maybe bring some tech which can convert coal to gas, for instance, that is one option, or some other technology, so that we use coal, why let go of that coal also? Instead of making coal such a dirty word, why don't we focus some energy investment efforts there? So I would like to have both your comments.
Very good question. This challenge has been there to a lot of even developed economies. So I'll give you an example in Japan. The largest blue ammonia consumption is targeted to be in Japan. And you've asked me where they're using it. They're actually using it in coal-fired plants. So the answer to reducing coal may not be a short-term solution, because you're not going to achieve that. Like she correctly said, it has to be, you cannot neutralize coal, and it's just not a switch you can turn on. Right? So it has to happen over phases.
Sure.
And the first step would be to, can we replace, can we substitute, can we co-inject a fuel which is cleaner, which is blue ammonia or green ammonia, and there's enough and more solar power, there's enough and more wind power through which we can produce green hydrogen. So Japan is pioneering a lot of technologies into using green hydrogen in the form of green ammonia into the power plants. That is one. The other area, of course, so the first answer to that is you got to try and see, can we reduce the quantum of coal being used instead of saying, can we go to zero? Because it's just not happening, right? The other aspect is that when you use coal and whatever pollutants that come out of coal, can we capture them and can we, let's say, find a home for them rather than letting them out in the air, which is all about the carbon capture thing, which is probably a more circular way of looking at it. It's probably more expensive, but no harm in trying that. Right now, a lot of pilots that have happened globally are all large-scale pilots, which is good, but I think quietly there are a lot of companies in the US, startups, who are looking at rather mini-scale carbon capture systems. I understand the Japanese are leading this game. And that's where I think we got to focus on. Can we try and do something about the pollution that comes out, CO2 that comes out? And then in addition to that, we look at how do we substitute some of coal into that. In terms of coal gasification, there is opportunity, but it's yet tested. So from a technological point of view, that's my clear answer.
Do you want to add something before we move on to?
No, actually he has covered the points. But yes, the carbon capture market is going to be the future that maybe now I would like to talk more on it because it's a subject, but yes. So that's the future that's what I'm saying. So net zero, when you have to become net zero, you can't think in one direction. You have to have different solutions because we are going to, and the businesses have to change. So there is an opportunity aligned to this. Right, so business have to explore in different opportunities, and maybe I'll talk more on this in the next subject maybe, but yeah.
Sure. Okay, now let me move from tech to something emotional, which Rishi is very fond of speaking about. So what can the companies adopt to protect communities and natural habitats? So this is something that Rishi is something very close to Rishi's heart, and natural habitats are significantly depleted. So would you like to touch upon that?
In fact, I was just thinking it's a bit of a misfit talking about that here right now, but still I'll do that. Because even if you see the discussion that's happening since morning, it's around the business, it's around the growth. But I think we're not taking a pause and just thinking how this can be an inclusive growth. And even COP26, whenever we talk about more objective, we tend to missing the second one, which is around the community and the ecosystem. I think we are more around how do you really manage 100 billion or something like that, that numbers. But I think it's very important to focus on that part. We will not be able to achieve our COP26 goal if we will not focus on that. Primarily because I think it's an issue of social and physical resilience that we really want to build in the community. And if we talk about social and physical resilience, I think it boils down to the 4 important focus area. It's restoring your ecosystem, working on livelihood, whether it's food security, working on health. The pandemic has taught us this is not something that you can really ignore. The last one is building infrastructure which can really take care of the climate change. But when I take a step back and when I just reflect on what was taught to me 25 years back when I was a student, in a very raw language I was taught about Jal, Jameen, Jan, Janwar, Jungle, so 5 J's. And when you take a back step, every framework is talking about same. So we are essentially missing out on something and just putting different frameworks to understand what more needs to be done. Where it's very simple, you have to just focus on the 5 J's, that's all. From a company perspective, we are really trying to focus our best how we can really address that missing link of restoring the ecosystem. We have picked up few species, we are working on conservation of that. Saras is one species from India which is was into a continuous decline state. So we have picked up that species, we are working very hard on it for the last 6-7 years. Very proud to say that we have almost kind of doubled that species in the last 5 years. Now we have taken up vulture also, we have added Saras. Saras. That's an indigenous crane from India. Normally our tendency is to go for the exotic migratory birds, but our own species was into a continuous decline. It was like almost zero. Earlier it was from Afghanistan till Indonesia, but it's now including 2 pockets. One is Kheda, Gujarat, and the second one is Mainpur, UP. It's completely wiped out from other places. So working on conservation of that, we're working on conservation of vultures. Again, I don't have to tell much about that. Everyone knows the way it's diminishing. We're working on social forestry with the community, and I'm not talking about the forestry that we have to do in the factory as a part of the legislation of greening. But you're working with the community, and it's a very long-term project. You have to really work very hard with the community to create forest. It's a 6-year project from sapling to forest. We have created more than 200 acres of that. We are working on mangrove plantations around coastal areas. We are working on creating a batch of students who are sensitized to ecology and environment. This is a part of a larger project that we call Vasudha. Vasudha means Mother Earth, giver of everything to us. Why I'm flagging this off? If I really look back and just see how many corporates are focusing on this kind of approach, I've got only on fingers. I'm not saying other issues are not important. In countries like India, education is very important, working on livelihood is very important, but this is not something that we can really miss on, especially now that climate change is hitting all of us on our face. It's no more a topic where we were thinking ki aaj hoga, kal hoga, parso hoga. It has reached us. It has reached everyone. So my submission is, it's a good idea to talk about growth in business and other things from different lenses, but let's not forget the basics. That's important for us to achieve the COP26 goal for all of us. That's my submission.
Thank you. Very, very thoughtful actually. I think let me just raise a disruptive point here. It's for the entire audience also. When would the human species learn to let live other species?
Exactly.
You know, we get to be very kind-hearted. We set a zoo for them, we breed them, but why? Let them be. They deserve to be free, isn't it? You know, but the effort that you're making is amazing because this is far better. Politically incorrect, but we all claim to be so-called goshalas and all that. As soon as the cow stops giving milk, they abandon it, and they'll kill the bullock. This is so unfortunate. So, as human species, high time we learn to let other species be. God has created a life cycle for them, and they'll happily survive. Or even if they don't survive, that is part of the food cycle. But high time we learn to be. Okay, again, Naved is staring at me. How come you're not talking to me at all? So Naved, very interesting for you. What models do you think will work best in the Indian context, focusing on ESG, investments that can create multiplier effects leading to scale? For instance, we're talking about the grassroots. Grassroots, we have to go deeper. You know, another simple question, maybe any one of you can attempt answering. We talk of CSR, and a lot of corporates, some of the corporates we work with, including Vedanta, we have Roma here from Vedanta. We also encourage the concept of ISR, that was individual social responsibility, wherein we encourage each employee to indulge in some kind of social activities over the weekends. So similarly, ESG, in case we have to go to grassroots, do you think there is a case for encouraging each employee to indulge into some kind of ESG activities, starting with maybe parents teaching their children to be responsible when it comes to cycling, recycling, reusing their stuff? Where do we stand?
Very difficult the way you've put it, because which comes first? Individual responsibility, corporate responsibility, social responsibility, who is responsible for what? If we look at the problem is going to hit us, like everybody in this room has been saying since morning, in the face. Environment degradation has reached a tipping point where it is no longer possible for us to continue business as usual. Right? Everything is changing. So how do how do we stop that or reverse it? There's only one thing in the world that talks, and that's money. Wherever the money flows, there the effort goes. So what we have to do is we have to look at the whole problem in a way. Does it make money for the person who's working at it or not? If it makes money for the farmer, for the rickshawala, for the small shopkeeper, then there will be effort in that direction. If it doesn't, no matter how much money Tatas or Mahindras or anybody pumps in, it's not going to change anything. So what we have to do is, and I will give you our example, what we are doing. We are, like Rishi said, ecosystem restoration is a huge challenge. Right? 1/3 of India's land is degraded. There's nothing that grows there. There's no productivity, no water, no vegetation. It's lost. It's like Pakistan came and took it away, right? And that is a huge challenge in front of us. But CSR money is not going to restore it. Business money will restore it. Right? So what do we do to bring business money to it? We have to build business models that utilize that land. Right? So I was speaking to Kiran before we started this discussion, and so the model that we are working on is there is already a lot of carbon in the atmosphere. Right? We need systems to capture that. The CCS technology is very premature and very expensive right now. Natural systems are cheaper, much cheaper. And we have the land to do it. We don't have to compete with food land, land that grows food. You can take degraded land, right? Every village has degraded land. So first, design a business model that captures large-scale carbon through natural systems. Grow bamboo, 17 tons per hectare every year, right? Grow things that do that. Don't do repetitive crops, do perennial crops. Don't use tractors, so you will save soil, right? Simple things. Use crops that are not water intensive, right? Like Pongamia, for example, right? Pongamia, it's a tree indigenous to India, right? It produces a bean which has more oil than palm oil and more protein than soya, right? Per hectare. And monetize it. Monetize it for the farmer who's growing it. Monetize for the communities who are engaged in its. And all these systems are available to us. We have to connect the market to the grower. Right? We have to build a business model where all these crops, tree crops, so you don't have to till, there is no carbon emission in growing. You've got a 30-year window to harvest it. Right? You never have to put another dime into it to sustain it. All you have to do is take care of it. Right? So while we do work with the forest department in Karnataka to restore degraded forests, we're doing that as a pilot right now. But what is important is that we build a business model that drives money into it so that money can be generated from it. So you capture the carbon, you create livelihoods, which is a big climate change consequence, right? And you substitute products that are high carbon emission. Right? So you do these three things on a large scale, you will get to your goal. I'm not saying this is the only way, but this can be a major pillar on which we can build.
very thoughtful and perceptive views. Naved, thanks. That gives me a couple of other thoughts that come to mind. I had read about very indigenous solutions and ideas. For instance, you pick up a barren land. You know, if you drive through one state to another, for kilometers together, you see no farming, barren land, and also a lot of water bodies, including some rivers. You know, on the barren land, you are in this sector, and especially for logistics, we can build up huge warehouses there, and on the roof we can put solar panels. Okay, such a simple solution. Barren land, no one is doing anything. Whoever owns it, give them whatever is written on power produced and whatever is the rentals from the logistics companies. That was one. Second is, Mukundanji, I just wanted to ask you, you are in a sector, energy sector, however good we may be, we eventually lead to pollution. Similarly, we are into logistics and I am into automobiles, and since we are into this and we produce, we create pollution. So at Retd Logistics, we ensure that we focus on two broad areas. One is pollution control, environment control. Second is road safety, because logistics also leads to road accidents. There is no denying the fact that in case you have thousands of lorries operating on roads, there will be some kind of. So what is that you do at UltraCast when it comes to taking beyond the corporate structure? Because I remember there's someone from, in the previous panel, someone who's from CI. Okay, now, there are policies, quality policies, there are CSR policies, there are ESG policies which are pasted on the shop floor. Some people remember it, but if there is an audit by CI or some rating agency, then employees are encouraged to remember it in case somebody comes, some auditor comes. So what efforts do we make to include employees? That is what I was referring to when we say let us simplify communication. Are we including employees at the base so that they become part of the campaign, ESG campaign? Would you like to share some example from your organization, and then maybe we can ask Kiran and others also.
Specifically from UltraCast perspective, I think the essential part of any, we have two policies which are fundamental to, which is probably the DNA. I think that's why I'm in the organization, and so are everybody else up here. I think the first thing is safety.
Absolutely.
Safety is a condition of employment. Because when we deal with hazardous substances, and it's fundamental to valuing human life. When you say condition of employment, it's not that you're fired. It's just that anybody who's working for an organization such as ours, I think they have to impact the fact that they can cause harm to others by virtue of them not having the skills or knowledge in dealing with hazardous products or flammable substances. So I think that's fundamental. Just in the same breath, I think if you don't have passion for going green, it makes no sense for you to be. I think that goes back to the point you made. So I think I think these two are critical. So I think I'm sure I'm seeing most organizations value this right at the time of interviewing candidates, etc. Some people may not have the education. That goes back to the point you talked about individual social responsibility.
Great. Yeah.
I think you should start early.
Great.
I think we got to start right at the school level and build that sort of mindset that it's not okay to pollute the atmosphere.
Sure.
It's not okay to littering the place.
Sure.
It's fundamental. So you start there, and then when you make conditions of employment such as this, unless you have the passion, you can't get on the bus. Something that you would probably be more, let's say, more accustomed to getting your sort of the right employee.
Sure.
So that's what we do. And on top of that, I think we have a lot of initiatives. Because we are green, we also want to make sure that people have the passion. So we encourage our family our employees' family also to understand. We run training programs. So I think these are stuff we do so that people appreciate where we are. I think the passion and the vision should be equally shared among everybody.
Aligned, yeah, absolutely. Very good. I'll share a very interesting example of, again, one of the previous companies that I worked with, Vedanta, Jain Oil and Gas. It spoke of catching them young, inducting them early. When GETs and MPs, they get hired, usually in most companies, they work for 1 year in various functions. They go to sales, marketing, operations, finance. We also send them to CSR. We send them to villages to work at Nanghar projects. So this is kind of sensitizing them to CSR and ESG. So I think this thing. Kiran, one question that you are keen, that you wish to talk about, how is the sustainability projects helping improving bottom line, that is return on climate changes and ESG from investors' perspective? Just touch upon that and then we move on. We've been threatened to wind up now.
Yeah. So see, that's what I was saying, let's be a little bit optimistic around it, because climate change has given a lot of opportunity. Like post-COVID also we have got a lot of opportunities, and these are opportunities, these are for livelihood of everyone, and plus for the business per se. So just to give example from Mahindra's perspective, all the renewable energy projects, renewable power projects, and the thing is, if you see how we can get to the bottom line. So one project I want to mention is green power. This year we are saving 40 crores power cost only with the green power. Right, so that's the kind of bottom line impact all the green projects have. They have IRR, very good IRR. The payback is less than 18 months, less than 12 months also. So these are the kind of sustainability projects that are directly impacting the bottom line. And if you see at the board also, people are realizing this, right? And they understand the value in ESG and sustainability per se, and how it is impacting the bottom line. The conversion cost of power and fuel, we could reduce so much. It has helped the total conversion cost of per vehicle, which is a huge impact directly integrating into the bottom line. And another example I want to give regards to the opportunity is, so there is a huge issues dwelling around the end of life of vehicle or end of life of products or PR per se. So Mahindra Zero is company who is into the eco-friendly recycling of the vehicles. So I'm saying that these are the kind of business opportunities which are coming up with climate change. So there are last mile mobility solutions. So these are the kind of a business that we are getting into, and I think we should look at this climate change in sense of they are providing us opportunity to disrupt his business in a different direction. So that's my take on it for the climate change.
Thank you. I think that is quite perspective. Kiran, now finally just share one example before we wind up. A couple of things. One, I request all of us here and all of us in the audience, we commit to ourselves that we'll do something to aid ESG, and we'll do individual ESG also, individual CSR also. I'll share a very small example. We work with this organization called Retd Logistics. We are into hauling automobile vehicles in big trailers across the city, and 10,000 drivers work directly with us, and we have another 10,000 who are contracted. Now, like Rishi mentioned, the case of inclusion, essentially what we're doing is, one, we are taking care of the welfare of the drivers. We tied up with this organization called Vision Screen. We are testing their eyesight, and we are providing them free spectacles, and we propose to touch 1 million drivers over the next 5 years, wherein we will check their eyesight and provide free spectacles that will take care of their health, as well as they'll make them more employable, and they'll make roads safer for public at large. That is one. Second is, more than that, welfare most of the companies take care of, but we are also working on according respect to this community. For instance, truck drivers are berated by cops across, they're harassed by people, no one respects them. So we're working with cops, we're working with various organizations where we can train so that these communities also respected. So that is what I was talking about, inclusion, and I think Rishi is bubbling with some ideas.
Just a kind of a closing remark, or maybe a statement that I want to make.
Sure.
I think it's important that we don't forget ecosystem restoration and coming again and again, and also my submission is that this is a little long-term investment and a long-term commitment. It can't be done in 1 year. I think Naved put it very nicely. CSR will not be able to do that. Business has to come in. Essentially, you need a return. It's a long-term thing that whether you call it an individual social responsibility or corporate social responsibility or a social responsibility, commitment has to be there. Long-term, you really want to work on an ecosystem restoration. That was my submission, because it's important to keep that in mind. It's not something you get ROI in quarter or a year or a 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. CSR, inclusion, ESG, they all add to the bottom line. They all add to your reputation. They all add to your brand equity. Any questions from the audience? We must be really good. There are no questions. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, Mr. Mukundan, Kiran, Rishi, Naved. Excellent inputs. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for such a wonderful discussion and such a wonderful panel. May I please request Rusen Kumarji to felicitate the guests one by one, please. May I request the audience to give a big round of applause. Yes, the clappings must continue. May I request all the panel members to have a group photograph, please. Group photograph. Thank you once again, all the panel members and the moderator, please. With this, we mark the closure of session 4. Now we'll be moving on to session number 5, which is aimed at discussion on CSR sustainability and ESG integration. And the panelists will discuss about corporate social responsibility and ESG and sustainability policies. May I please request Mr. Abhishek Ranjan, Director and Global Head Sustainability Brilio, who is the moderator of the 5th session, to come on the dais, please. May I please request Nitesh Pandya, Chief Sustainability Officer, Vedanta Limited, Aluminium Business, to come on the dais. May I please request Mr. Vivek Prakash, Vice President and Head CSR, Jubilant India Limited, Jubilant Bhartiya Group. May I have a big round of applause for all the panel members. So now it's over to you, Abhishek ji.
Good afternoon, everyone. I come from the city, Bangalore, the city which is always very sustainable living place. Very proud of that. And 2 weeks back when I was in Delhi, it was at 43 degrees. And Mumbai also doesn't surprise that much. So I think it's great to see that how CSR is now driving the ESG agenda or vice versa. Because most of the time, we all knew that sustainability is one day is going to be at the forefront. And I see in the tagline, sustainability first. It's very true that, the whole world is talking about ESG, sustainability, and that's the one common lingo, including the sustainable development goals, I think we all should be discussing. We have very eminent co-panelists with us, Mitesh Pandya, who is the CSO at Vedanta. Welcome, Mitesh. We also have a distinguished co-panel, Vivek Prakashji, who is the Vice President and Head at CSR for Jubilant Ingrevia Limited. And the topic what we have been given to us was that how do we integrate CSR, ESG, sustainability? It's not like competing philosophies or competing ideas, but it's a more of a complementing ideas. So before we kickstart this, panel, I know that the onus of keeping this momentum alive is not just for three of us on the panel, but is also on the audience. And we'd like all the audience members who are present here to also be participative in asking questions, feedback, so that it gives us more insights, more learning for us as well. So that is very, very valuable, and we'll be looking forward to receive a lot of questions from each one of you on this panel. And we have kept a good amount of time in this panel for audience questions. So before I request my co-panelists to come over and address a brief about what their company is doing, how they see as a CSR and ESG integration is happening, just a quick things on how some of the global data or global researchers are talking about ESG. I come from a company which is backed by a private equity firm, Bain Capital, and I have seen in the last 3 years how customers, how investors are asking questions around ESG. For many of us, a few years back, ESG or sustainability is all about environment, right? That's the kind of ideas we were always to think. Today, ESG is a lot more. So environment, social governance, what we do see here, diversity, inclusion, how do you take care of your own employee health and safety, people transformation at your workplace. All of this is getting included in ESG. So if you look at in the days to come, and it's not too early to kind of predict that a lot of things what companies are doing for their own human resource, their own human welfare, employee welfare, will be a part of the ESG or already is a part of the ESG. Right? That's how the world is thinking. So when we say people, planet and profit, people is not just about the people whom we serve as a customer or who are affected by our operation, the community, but also the people who works for you, directly or indirectly. I think their welfare is also a sustainability. When we were doing a GRI charter, that time we realized how many policies we have to rewrite for employee welfare. Why I am saying this is not the only thing in sustainability, but I think many times some of these ideas are left to discuss. So we will hear from both our co-panelists today to understand first how these companies are doing their in terms of CSR and sustainability, and also how their companies are defining sustainability or ESG. So with this, without much ado, I would like to request our first panelist, Mr. Mitesh Pandya, who is a CSO at Vedanta Limited for Aluminum Business. I request you, Mitesh, to please, you want to speak here or you can be comfortable, whichever way it works for you. Thank you.
So, am I audible? Yeah. So, thank you. Good afternoon, gentlemen, and India CSR for providing me this opportunity to come and actually express my views. Yeah, inclusive growth. I fully appreciate. So the whole the objective is about how the evaluation of sustainability has taken place, which actually started. If you look at India, has always been a sustainable, from whether we're talking about, Sarvena Sukhina Bhavantu, everybody want to, well wish for everybody. Even, when we talk about this, everything Shanti, right? It means that we want to talk about the peace not in human being, but also in the environment. Now, since then, I think that over the period of time, we are probably looking at that we are coming back to our roots. The point is that we looked at the sustainability from that point when this, industrial revolution took place. People realized that environment is degraded over the period of time. Discrimination is taking place in the society. And then UN came into the picture talking about environmental regulation, talking about how we talk about, political rights, human rights, civil rights, all these things. But as in India, if you look at those rights were always provided. Maybe even in this last 300 years where we had actually domination from other countries, we probably lost that touch. I think it's a time to relook into ourselves, see that where we were, where we belong to, bring into our culture back, and look at everything from the respect point of view, because everything requires due respect, and that will help us in building the trust which is there. Probably that is what is lacking. And I think many of the things which we talked about, whether we talk about the inclusive growth, whether we talk about human rights, it's all about probably starting with the trust and the respect for each other. And we as a Vedanta, we proudly believe that the thing starts from the top. Because everywhere I think what we believe that if the leadership is not really sensitive to about things what they are talking about, the things will not percolate down to the ground. And we believe as a company, as a founder of this organization, Mr. Agarwal, that we believe that we want to give it back to the society. The whole purpose of the organization is about giving back to the society. He himself has pledged about 75% of wealth to the society. And we are also being taught to, engage ourselves with the volunteerism, go back to the society. Our CSR spend is one of the large. But end of the day, it is all about the inclusive growth, whether we talk about profit, whether we talk about people, whether we talk about planet, everything has to be in, sync. Because unless until there is no economical development, the remaining development will not happen. So everything starts about how do you start looking at economical growth, economical development, human development, environmental development, and all this is linked with each other. And I think as we move forward, we discuss this in more detail, but this is what we are, and we believe that we are here to give back to the society. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Vivek.
Thank you. So I think during this the entire conversation we have already discussed many things. In the last panel also there was a discussion that we should focus on CSR or we should go by business. I think in my view, if we are discussing about CSR, it means we are only discussing about 2% of the entire business. We have to think about other 98%. So if you want to create something good for the society, this 2% cannot do entire good for the society. You have to think about those 90% also, 98% also. So that 98% can create impact. 2% cannot create impact. 2% is just I was. In my view, this is just I was. Whatever you are depleting, or you are just compensating it. I'm not saying everybody is doing that. There are many organizations, most of the organizations are doing good, but there are many who are just covering up this. So if entire 98%, that is the entire business is not towards this ESG or CSR, you cannot think about a good society in this world. So I always say about 4P, it's not 3P. So 4P about ESG only. So like the first thing is the product or services which you are producing. So you just think what product you are going to or what services you are going to produce. If it is not required for the society, why you are into this business? If you are into a business which is required by the society, it's a need of the society, certainly your business will sustain and society will also grow, society will also take your company in the longer run. So you name any company which is running since last 100 years, you just think what was the product, why they are till date available on this earth. Otherwise, many companies are coming and they are going out. So, if you are thinking about those products and services which are required by the society, need of the society, need of the hour, your company will sustain, your business will sustain, and you can create a lot of impact. Then again, you have to think about the quality of product also. It's not just product. If you are producing your product and services in a good quality, certainly you will be a sustainable organization. The next P, which is again important, is the people. People who are working with you. I am not saying you are not taking care of your employees, your contractual employees, or you are going in the society or doing CSR. It's not good for the company also, it's not good for the society also. You first take care for those who are working for you, your employees. You take care of them, they will take care of your company. And then you go to outside, because community is also a stakeholder of your company. So charity starts from home. So you first take care of your employees, and certainly your entire community will, and then again you will think who are there who are getting impacted due to our business. Certainly the immediate community and their customers. So certainly you will work for them and your company will become sustainable. So second P is also important. Otherwise your business will not sustain. Third P, again, I'm always saying that if you are doing a business, you are into manufacturing of any product or services, you are taking care of employee or community, but if you are not taking care of the planet, you are not taking care of the climate, you will not sustain. You have to take care of the climate where you are functioning, where you are working. If you are not, you will not take care of those things, certainly your business will not sustain. And if you will take care of these three P's, certainly the 4P is the byproduct of these three, that is the profit. So certainly your profit will come, you will do your CSR 2%, 98%, 5%, whatever you want. So like I explained that his chairman these promoters have donated his 70%, but from where? Because he earned this money from the society, that's why he was able to donate it for the society. So if you are taking care of these 3P, then only your 4P will come and you will be able to create impact in the society. So in my view, ESG is nothing but inclusion of this 4P, and that is and this should be way of your life. In the previous panel, somebody was asking, so whether it is IPR or corporate responsibility. It's IPR. It starts from IPR. If you are not taking care of you are not fulfilling your responsibility, how you will take care of company's responsibility? So, like in our company, there are many employees who are coming to our company for working. They are coming on train, on the top of the train, or sitting on the top of the bus, and you are saying that we are taking care of safety within these premises. Your company will not sustain. Accident will happen because there is no behavior among those employees. So you have to change on those BCC activities to change the mindset, so that if they are starting from home to come to your factory, they should follow the safety rules. They are hooking in the villages for getting electricity, and you are thinking that they will follow the lotto when they are working at your plant. They will never follow this rule because they are practicing at their home. So you have to change their mindset. So it's not just your employer campus, but your stakeholder also. So it's very important. So you have to make ESG as a KRA or KPI for each and every employee. Then only, so it's not the board, only the board subject. No doubt, it comes from top to bottom, but the board should take the responsibility that, okay, we will improve our ESG indicators in the next 5 years, 10 years. Same way, each and every employee should have some target for the next financial year in their KRA, that okay, we will do this at our level, at shop floor level also, at company level, at factory level also, at corporate level also, at supply chain level also. So each and every employee should have this component of ESG in their KRA. In our organization, we have learned this. Earlier it was not there, but in the last 3-4 years at Jubilant, especially Jubilant Life Science, earlier it was Jubilant Life Science, now it's Jubilant Ingravia. So when we go for this RC, responsible care certification, we realize that it's not the company policy. Everybody should have their it's in their KRA. Then only we can think for getting this responsible care certification, and then we can sustain this certification for the longer run. Because every alternate year they are coming for audit, and you cannot get certification if your employees are not obeying those rules which have been framed for the organization. So now each and every employee is having KRA, ESG in their KRA, in their KPI. So it's a learning for us also. We have learned, and this ESG is a journey. This country has traveled this journey, and no doubt now time has come when we have to take a certain jump. Then only we will be able to sustain our country and this society also.
Thank you very much. I think some very wonderful. Am I audible? Yeah. So I think some of the very interesting thing came. One is I think compliance both externally and internally, right? And I totally agree that sometimes KRA setting really works. It's a debate between any organization that shall we do carrot and stick, but I think either of is not an option. You have to have a combination of both carrot and stick. The other very important point which came in this discussion, earlier discussion, that ESG is not just CSR, 2% of the net profit which you spend, but how do you earn 100% of your business? How do you run your business? That is what our co-panelist Vivekji spoke about. The other element, I think, sustainability, many people will feel, or ESG, it's something has come from the West, or something has come from the developed nation. But the fact is that the principle of sustainability, the principle of ESG is actually given by long back by Mahatma Gandhi. When he talked about trusteeship, when he said that the businesses have no rights to own they are just a trustee of their businesses. They are not owning the entire thing. And that responsibility, what he taught to businesses, business houses at the time when independence era was happening, I think if that trusteeship principle is kind of applied in today's world, and the greed, the whole greed, why this? I think somebody very rightly said that industry 1.0 and industry 5.0, what we are talking, and if you look at how we have had impacted the environment or the climate change, it's actually proportionate to how much industrialization has happened in the world. So I think the greed has somehow kicked in. We just thought that what is in for me today, we didn't think about the future, and that is a problem we have created. But there are good stories also. I think everywhere I have traveled outside India or spoken to people from outside India, they all are very curious about India CSR, the 2%. How did you do? And actually, I will be very honest. Many of my colleagues in the US, in the CSR world, they have a KRA, and which says the India 2% CSR. How are you going to manage that as your global KRA? So I think that's a very interesting thing India has done. So any feedback from both you gentlemen? Because we don't have a very diverse panel, so which is also not very good. I think we should have some more diversity in our panel. But in the absence of that, I have to call both of you only. So how do you think that CSR is actually driving ESG in India? Because CSR has a clear budgeted amount, but unfortunately ESG, I'm not talking about two companies who are with here, but many companies, smaller, mid-sized companies or not so large company, they still need to have budgets for ESG. How do you suggest that when they go to their management or board, which is outside the CSR, what are the tips would you like to give to drive ESG for their respective companies? You want to start?
I think it's a tricky question. So one side you are saying that 2% is a mandatory, and again, if you will read word by word this act, not a single rupee you can invest in the interest of company. You have to invest in the interest of the society. But again, it's the responsibility of us how you are creating a project which is having business linkage. If you are having a project which is having business linkage, the both will get benefit and it will be a sustainable CSR project. So CSR itself is a question mark. So today you are supporting a project, whether tomorrow if there will be no profit, that project will die. So are you going to create such project, or you are going to create a sustainable project? So like in case of Vedanta, so they are creating Nandghar. It's a very good project, but they have kept in mind from the beginning that they will not create a parallel system. They will work with the government, they will create, they will support, they will upgrade it, and then it will be handed over to the community or to the government so that it will run in the longer run. So this is one part. On other side, but here company is not getting benefit out of this Nandghar. They are getting benefit in terms of their employees' engagement, their branding and everything, but not directly the business benefit. And it has to go longer run. If there will be any instance where company's profit will decrease, this project will die. I am giving you another perspective of this. You just think about ITC Chopal. It's not 2013 story. It's prior to 2013 when ITC started. This ITC Chopal, it's a simple business case CSR. That time they had not thought about that this act will come and it will become part of the CSR also. But now it's a part of CSR, parts of business. So everything, company is getting benefit out of it, society is also getting benefit out of it. So same way, there are many such projects, especially this paper industries are working, so they are, or tire industries are working, so they are working with the farmers to grow more and more trees, and ultimately they are in their value chain. I am giving you two live examples from our Jubilant Bhatia group. One example is in Jubilant Foodworks. So we are having a brand called Domino's. So there is a product called cheese. So cheese is a high value product which we are procuring from various milk company or dairy company. So cheese is coming, so people are thinking that cheese is synthetic. Actually, this is not synthetic cheese, it is coming from milk, and milk ultimately is being grown by the farmers. So what we are doing, we are working with those dairy companies to work with those farmers to improve the quality and quantity of milk. Now this is the CSR, and this is the business also. One side we are doing CSR, but certainly it will create lot of impact to the business. That the quality of cheese you cannot ascertain if you are not bringing good milk. So that is a link. Another project which it's a social enterprise model which we started. So there is a product in our animal nutrition division. It's called Hon'ble choline, and it requires neem leaves to prepare that product. One day during COVID, I was in the executive committee meeting, and there was a discussion during COVID. There was a discussion that they are facing trouble to get neem leaves. Certainly, because I was part of that EC, that's why I heard that. Then in the supply chain was mentioned that we are struggling to get these neem leaves because neem demand has increased due to COVID. And then I came into picture. I told them, why you are struggling to get neem? While neem is available everywhere in Gujarat, Rajasthan, in fact in this entire country. Then within 3 months, we activated our SHG groups. They established their own unit. So now they are collecting neem leaves, they are pulverizing it, and they have established a factory. SHG group has established a factory next to our plant, and now they are collecting neem leaves. They are dried neem leaves, pulverizing it and supplying it to company. Now this is CSR also. Now we are creating employment of 2,000 women out of it. Only in one state in Gujarat. Another 2,000 are getting employment out of it. But again, it will take another 2 years. Next year, that is in 2021, we went for neem trees plantation across the country. Now in UP, Maharashtra, Karnataka, in Rajasthan, everywhere we started planting neem trees through SHG groups. So Panchayat has given land. We provided support to SHG groups. They are planting it. They are getting a stipend from us as per. This is again a CSR. So now this is the responsibility of the development professionals who are working in these sectors. How you are developing a project which is going to create impact for the business, impact for the society, and impact for the environment also. So these are two live examples which I am giving. You can see these things on our website also. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I think people will, I think when they eat Domino's pizza next time, they'll have less care now after your explanation. Thank you. Retd, over to you.
So I think the question was about how the CSR is going to bring in the ESG value for the country, right? See, for us, the CSR is basically the shared value, right? We are here in the business to support the society, and in turn we also get the money from the society, because unless until the society is not there, where are we going to sell our products? Now, if you look at all our products are basically for the community, whether whatever the metal what we sell, it is all used for the community only, right? It's for the benefit. Now, unless and until the society where we operate is not the prosperous, we are not going to become prosperous. That's a very, very important ethos what we have kept in our mind. Now, how do we do it? It is only way you do it that you have a shared value vision. It means that what you do, your community also gets benefit, and whatever the community is benefited, that also helps a company to get benefit. So, for example, whatever the social program which you are running, whether we are talking about the watershed management program for our operation, which are in water, stress area, it is not only providing us the opportunity to create the water availability for us, but also, relieving the water which is there for the community, right? So that watershed program what we are developing, it is for the community. It is a localized program which is happening across the watershed within the 5,000 acre of area, where the community is getting the water at their doorstep. They don't have to spend money for getting the water, pumping cost and other thing, and they use that water efficiently for their agriculture, and what we get the water available for us, so there is no conflict between us and the society for the shared resources. Similar way, when we operate our power plant, the ash is being generated. Now, ash management is one of the biggest issues, but suppose if we are able to provide this ash at free of cost to the community and provide them with the technology which is, and the certification which actually helps them to sell this, ash-based bricks and provide them economy to earn the livelihood. This is what we call the shared value. Now we operate in the society. Now you know that there are now people are talking about whether diversity. But when we talk about diversity, we talk about only two genders. But there is a third gender is also available. Government has taken note of, and they actually put a tick mark over it. We have actually started employing them, because end of the day, if we don't have an inclusive society, the society will have a conflict, there will be riots, there will be some kind of issues, and that is going to create a disharmony in the society. The society will not be at peace at large. So what we are trying to see, that whatever we do it with a purpose. The purpose is that is a symbiotic relation between us and the society as a large. We benefit the society and society benefit us. And end of the day, what is the ESG end of the day? The ESG is like whatever this principle and policies which we imbibe as a culture, not only help us, but also help us, doing the environment and social thing, but also economically. So today, there is a lot of money available which is to be employed for the industry. Just give you an example that I think the number was about, say, I think in 2017 and 19 when this ESG investment had started, and in 2021, the investment under the ESG umbrella has almost tripled. It has gone to somewhere around 700 billion to $1 trillion is available for the use. And we as a country is looking for big investment, because we are 100 billion plus population. We require money to survive, and we as an industry has an obligation to showcase the good industry and good work what we are doing, and this money available, because this money what we are doing is the industry is not going to grow, unless this capital is available. And this capital is available at a very cheap rate if you are able to show and project that what good work you are doing it. So it is not about doing the right thing, but it is about showing and portraying what you are doing is right. So it is all about that how you are managing your business, how you are seen doing the business in right manner. And I think this is what we are trying to do it. And I believe the ethos, we as a country what we have, our culture what was taught, We as a industrialists, whether it's a Tata, Birla, or we as a, Ambani's and whatever the, we as a Agrawals, the company and country, we had always this CSR as a value in our mind, giving back to the society. Now that we want to capitalize as our foundation stone and see this value, the money which is available for the utilization, how we utilize it, and we grow as a company and we grow as a country. That is what we look at it. Thank you.
Very well summed up, I think, and that's a great way of kind of summarizing how sustainability is a business agenda, no longer a separate agenda, and that's why we see that sustainability is taking its importance in board meeting or leadership meeting. There's a funny incident happened when McKinsey did a survey in the US, not only US, global CXOs, and they asked that why sustainability does not feature in your agenda. It was one of the questions which McKinsey asked to thousands of senior executives. And some of the very interesting answer came in that was that nobody taught sustainability in our business schools, right? Which is a fact, right? I mean, we all know that sustainability is now taking a front seat in many of the business schools, or you have a course and a lot of people are taking MBA sustainability program. But I think what change I have seen personally, I think CSR professionals, many of I started with CSR now taking care of sustainability, and many of the CSR leaders have taken in their respective organization. So in a way, CSR has brought a lot of attention to the social issues, bringing to the community. And that's how we see that today even India CSR is doing a first time ESG conference, right? That is what I was talking to them for many years, that sustainability should be first. CSR is a part of it. Beginning to that, there's one topic which I think probably I have not heard in earlier panel and probably like to bring to the notice of this panel, is about the supply chain or the value chain. Sustainability does not stop what you do at your company level, or it's also about how companies are supporting their value chain. Two examples before I hand it over to our co-panelists. One is Ford Motors done very extensively for their entire retail network or their supply chain, and many of the large companies nowadays, they're actually supporting their vendor, because unless your supply chain is not sustainable, you cannot be claimed as we are a carbon net zero or a carbon neutrality company or a sustainable company. So I'd like to hear from both of you. I think you have given a great example for Domino's example, but if you have running a program for supply chain, if you'd like to share some examples around that.
So as I explained, so it's a journey. Sustainability is a journey. So you have to start first from your company. So how you are doing your business. Then comes to your other stakeholder, and supply chain is part of that. So and there are many companies, even in our company, we are doing a lot of business through external manufacturing. So there are many partners who are doing external manufacturing for us. And if they are not sustainable, in fact, our company will become unsustainable. And so now when we started getting fund from IFC in 2010, so then IFC started doing impact assessment for our company. And that time we realized that we have to focus on green supply chain, to making our supply chain green. And from there our journey started, especially on this part. So we shortlisted our top 50 partners in our supply chain, and then accordingly we started. So we started first with the top 10, and then we are increasing the numbers. Now we have crossed top 50, and we are going again to increase the arena, so that more and more the vendors and suppliers who are associated with us, they are also sustainable, because without them we cannot be a sustainable business, because we are doing a lot of our businesses are mainly B2B, and if we are not sustainable, then certainly the people, because we are doing export to European and US countries, so if their business will be on stake. So that's why we are working on this, and it's a journey. I'm not saying we are 100% compliant and 100% all our supply chain partners are assessed on this parameter. But again, that we started with top 10, top 20, top 50, and then we are increasing the arena so that all supply chain partners or external manufacturing partners are also working on this. But there are no compromise on few things, that is on EHS compliance and HR compliance. But there are many other aspects also which we need to work upon, and we are working on this.
So things for us in this. One is responsible supply chain, another is sustainable supply chain. Responsible supply chain talks about the human rights management, right? I think earlier panel talked about those untouchability, caste and kind of thing. Very frankly, we believe in the merit and the positive affirmation. Because I think the people who are not able to sustain themselves, it is our responsibility to ensure that they get an equal opportunity. And to provide them equal opportunity, we need to provide them equal platform also. And that's where the affirmativity comes into the picture. And where it comes into the picture, we talk about the MSMEs, right? So we work with the MSMEs, we ensure that certain portion of our product comes from the MSMEs. Second thing, we also ensure that wherever we work with the responsible supply chain in the sense that all human rights related issues, whether we talk about the child labor, forced labor, these are part of the laws also, but they have been ensured. Now what happens that probably we are, some of the issues when we go, when you go in US, probably they are not fathomable that these things happen in India or other places. Similarly, when you operate out of India, you can't fathom that some of the issues and inequalities issues can go and happen in Africa and other countries. For example, certain African countries always have those blood-related issues where there is a continuous fight is going on, right? So there are all human right-related issues, whether it is a blood money, blood diamond, whatever you call it, right? So conflict money which is going on. And many minerals-rich countries are having these issues. So we are working upon this area. It is also require our, London Metal Exchange. If you have to sell a metal there, you need to have these requirements, responsible supply chain. So we work with this. Even many countries like say whether UK and all these countries have this requirement. We have a system where we have a third-party audit system where we look at our tier 1 and tier 2 supplier, where basically how the audit takes place about all this regulation required with the basics rights part of it. Their regulatory requirement, whether they're meeting all the regulatory requirement, pollution controls and other thing, and then we manage. The whole objective is that we need to bring them to the platform where we are operating it, and it's a continuous positive affirmation by which you are handholding them so that they come up to a level, may not be today, maybe after the few years. And we have seen a great example, believe me or not, very proud to say, when I actually look at how the evolution takes place, we had certain suppliers where they are the power plant operators, very frankly. We are actually operating 9 gigawatt of power plant. It's pretty one of the largest private plant, privately owned power plants because our aluminum requires a lot of, captive power plant. Those suppliers which actually started with our own as a, one-off kind of thing, they got an entry into it. Now they are actually stock listed in Indian bourses. And they're running at many of the power plant operation. Not only power plant operation, they've got into the infrastructure. And when I look at the journey of these companies, it's amazing. So my whole point is that it is our obligation as a corporate social responsible company that provide an opportunity to compete. Okay, we are not doing any charity on anybody. We are trying to give an equal opportunity to everybody to compete in this world and see that they also get a chance to excel and show their talent. And I think we are very proud to do that, whether it's a part of supply chain or whatsoever it is. As a part of our policies, we actually make sure that we have a certain local employment and local supply chain development program. So we actually, as a part of our KPI, actually look at that how much local supply chain or local employment we are creating and how much local supply chain we are generating. And this definition goes for us in a district level, that we see that how much revenue we are generating or spend we are doing based on the local supply chain. Same is also applicable for the local employment, where we see that it's our obligation and to basically where we actually earn money, the people should also prosper out of that area. So we try to provide certain employment to the local community area. So these are the some of things we actually put up, whether it's a capital supply chain or whether it's a human part of supply chain. Thank you.
I think very valid point. I think the point which you made on the human side of it, I think especially like child labor, Some of these could be totally non-negotiable. Some of these things I think will have some room for some timeline to do that. But I think some steps we can start very early, which is non-negotiable for our supply chain, and of course a lot of hand-holding. I know many of the large technology companies in the world, they are actually helping their mid-sized vendors, IT services company to comply to CPP, and they actually give subscription paid to those companies. I think there's a lot of program which proudly I was talking about Ford Motors with that. So I think we have one last question I have for our panelists. But before I ask that question, if anybody in the audience would like to know more about them or any questions you may have, please do ask.